Bonjour et bienvenue à toutes et à tous dans le Festival des Nouveaux Chemins Éducatifs, deuxième édition du Sommet de l'Éducation. Je vous présente aujourd'hui Catherine Eubanck, que je suis allée rencontrer l'été dernier. Catherine a fondé une école de la forêt intégrale dans l'est de la Virginie, sur le terrain de sa maison dans les bois. Découvrez sa philosophie, le fonctionnement et la jeunesse de ce projet radical et inspirant. Bonne découverte!
We are an internationally accredited forest school. We are a non-profit forest school. We incorporated in 2019 when we saw that there was a huge need in the community for forest school, but there wasn't the parents were not financially able to pay for their children to go to forest school. And we believe that it was important that children from all different backgrounds be able to go to a traditional forest school. Our forest school was based on the Scandinavian model, which I took all of my forest school courses in England through Archimedes Limited, which is just a forest school company. It just teaches people to run their own forest school. So I was really excited to finally graduate because I had to go back to school. It's completely different from what I'd done, but we had this beautiful forest, and we just thought it was important to offer something to the community to get as a way to give back. Children right now, I think, are at a greater risk than never before. They're losing their ability to communicate effectively. When they are mad or sad or upset about something, they bottle it up. They don't know what to do with these feelings, and that's why we're seeing an uptick in school violence because they don't know how to solve their problems. They're left with no other resource, or so they think, than to bring violence into our schools to deal with their anger. And then if they don't have a predisposition towards violence, they're taking their own lives, or they're turning to drugs and alcohol to solve their problems. Forest school teaches children to problem solve, to think for themselves, to communicate. It teaches socialization, leadership, self-esteem, all the things that children seemingly used to have but don't necessarily have now. And they're starting to think that it is because children are less and less in nature.
Okay.
People, because of society, aren't letting their children outside to play until dark. There's just too many bad guys out there. No one would just push their kids outside in the city and say, we'll see you at dinner time. Nobody does that. They are now being watched all the time by their parents, or they're inside all the time because their parents don't have the time to stay outside all the time with their children. And so now children are sitting in front of the TV, or they're sitting in front of a computer, they're playing video games, they're on their cell phones, all of the things that they shouldn't be doing. Their brains aren't wired for that. And our brains aren't wired for that either. We as people need to be outside as much as possible. It's not natural for us to be indoors.
I agree.
So how do we get kids outside? If you told a child today to go outside, he'd look at you like you were nuts. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, there's nothing to do outside. All of my games are inside. I don't know how to play outside. Forest school, through play, teaches children how to play outside with sticks and stones and using their creativity in the mud pit, that type of thing. Making mud pies and all sorts of wonderful things. Nature crafting even, collecting nuts and sticks and putting them together to look like butterflies or whatever you want to do, you can do. It's the options are completely endless because the forest gives you everything that you need to raise a healthy, happy child. And now we're thinking, because of COVID and the stresses of life, living in the 20th century, we need adults to go outside, because now we're seeing violence in the workplace, and we're seeing adults taking their lives, or we're seeing adults turning to drugs and alcohol at an all-time high. It's not just the children that are suffering, it's the adults that are suffering also. And when mom and dad aren't in a good place, their children won't be in a good place. So this fall, we're going to start offering forest school for adults, because play for adults is just important. I mean, if you think about it, when was the last time you went out with your friends and played in the woods? Tag or hide and seek in the woods? But you're laughing now because it was fun when you were a kid. It's just as fun when you're an adult. But we get so wrapped up in our lives and our responsibilities that we forget how to be a kid.
And what is that forest school for adults? What will look like? What will it look like?
All right. So like the other day when we were showing you how to do a campfire. And start it with a flint and steel.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
And you were like, oh, I don't know.
Well, I did.
But you did, and you had fun. You were engaged.
Well, I'm used to be outside, so I don't really need anyone.
Right. But a lot of people don't know how to start a fire. They don't know how to build a campfire. Just like a little kid doesn't know how to build a campfire. And everything that goes into it. So I like to explain forest school is like a campfire.
All right.
When we're teaching campfire basics, we're teaching tree ID to the children. They learn how to identify different types of trees, because when you're building a campfire, you have to know what you want your campfire to be for. Are you building a campfire to cook on? Because if you're building a campfire to cook on, you don't want to use something like sycamore, because sycamore is going to put out a lot of sparks. And then all of our clothes are full of holes. So you have to know what types of trees are good for other types of things. If you're cooking on a campfire and it's summer and you want to do a s'more, you probably don't want to do a wood that's going to put out a lot of heat, because it's already hot.
What is s'more?
A s'more? It's okay. So it's 2 graham crackers, and then on a stick you put 2 marshmallows.
Okay, now I see.
And then you have chocolate, and it's a s'more. So if you're making s'mores over the campfire, you don't want, because it's summer, you don't want a campfire that's going to put out a lot of heat. You want one that's going to put out a little heat. Because you're cooking and it's really, really hot already. But if it's winter time and you're freezing and you want to make some hot cocoa, you don't want to put on wood that's not going to put out a lot of heat. You want the warmth. So it's their understanding of what types of trees are available to you in the forest, and identifying the trees, whether they're alive or dead, is very important. And then foraging for punk. Do you know what punk is? Right, so see, you're learning something already. So punk is the inside squishy matter of a tree that's already dead and rotted for quite some time, and it's going to be almost like tissue paper when you have a spark.
I see, exactly.
So you need to get some punk, and then you need to forage for cordage. Cordage is anything that you can tear off of bark that's stringy, or you can use hay or straw, any kind of dried grasses for cordage, any type of dried thin material that you can use to help you build your little fire triangle. So you need 3 things to get a fire going successfully. You need oxygen, you need a fuel source, and you need a heat source. So once you gather all of your equipment together, all of your materials, now you have to figure out how you want to build your campfire. Do you want to do a teepee? Do you want to do a waffle? It's all these things that go into building a campfire. Now we have our little setup all ready to go, and now you have a flint and steel, and now you got to get a spark, which isn't so easy sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Then, from that spark, you have to get it lit, which isn't so easy sometimes. Then you find out that's all that before was the easy part. Keeping your fire lit is the really hard part. Now you have a blazing fire, but it took you all these steps along the way to get to that campfire. And that's like forest school. Forest school isn't the campfire. Forest school is the steps to the campfire.
The process. Okay.
If that helps.
Yeah, it does.
So we're teaching how to do campfires. And it will start off as a little lesson, and then we play in the forest. So we can play tag. We had a great adult game of tag in the forest the other day, and the adults had a blast, running around, hiding behind trees, trying to catch each other. Or we could play other games like capture the flag. And then we can start it off by also relaxation, like nature journaling, or nature sketching, or sand painting, or nature crafting. These are all things that will help connect adults to nature in a natural setting in the middle of the forest. And then there's mud play. So adults can get squishy in the mud. They can have different tasks that they need to perform, like build a 7-course meal out of mud and sticks and leaves and rocks, that type of thing, and build a recipe behind all of that. Or water play, going into the water and identifying different bugs that we can find. It's called macroinvertebrates. So we do a great macroinvertebrate study down there. All of these things are geared towards either teaching children or adults how to relax and step away from their families, step away from their responsibilities at work, and just be in nature, which is very important. And children are the same way. They have time away from their families, away from their parents, who are constantly saying, you need to do this, and you need to do that, and come and do this, and come and do that. This is their safe space. And now we are organizing a safe space for adults also.
So you said you got your class from a school in England?
Archimedes.
Do you have any more mentors or inspirations?
So, yeah, Paul Mosley was my instructor.
Okay.
And he has his own nonprofit now. He's not with the company anymore. And I am in contact with him quite often. And I even ran by the idea of Forest School for Adults, and he said it was absolutely brilliant. He can't wait to come and visit He's never seen our forest school, but I keep in touch with him weekly, even after all these years, just because, everybody needs some kind of help and direction. And he was my teacher, and he's far smarter than I am with all this.
Is there any network of forest school here in the US? Or is
There is. It's called ERAFANS.
Okay.
It's the Eastern Regional Association for Forest and Nature Schools, and it's ERAFANS, ERAFANS. That is the closest one, but I have found that they're in their forest schools. It's mainly nature clubs. I don't think for forest our forest school is the only forest school I know on the East Coast that does a traditional forest school. Most other forest schools that I'm aware of meet at a city park with their parents for a couple of hours and just go into the forest at a park. It's not set up like we are.
Yeah, because we have to say that it's an all-year-round school, and you said you have kids from what age to what age?
Right. So we offer summer camp, and then in the fall we offer a primary school, not just forest school. So it's a little different. We're an internationally accredited forest school, but for our primary school, that's grades preschool through 8th grade. We are now going for our accreditation for that. Since we've been open for a year for our primary school, we can now apply for full accreditation for our primary school. Our primary school is, our curriculum still follows the Virginia Standards of Education, the SOLs, but we're teaching a little bit different.
Okay.
We're teaching outside, of course. We have no textbooks. We have no busy work, no little pieces of paper that the kids can just do to mind-numbingly, just sit and doodle. We're getting the kids up and moving. And it's all project-based. So for the 9 months that we're in school, each month is focused on a different project. If you are aware of the acronym STEM, STEM is a little bit about what we're doing, only better. We're offering STREAM. So STREAM is STEM plus reading and art.
Okay.
And that STREAM project-based curriculum with a different theme each month is all focused on American history, using forest school as a background. So the first month we are doing American Indians, because those were the first Americans, and their project is going to be building an Indian village, which is going to be a lot of fun. But then, so for all the different grades, they will all have a different level of tasks that they need to complete for their STREAM project. So the kindergartners are still doing American Indians like the 8th graders, but of course we're asking them to do different things based on their educational levels.
Sorry, and you said you stay outside all days?
All
right?
day, yeah, all day, every day, rain or shine. We do have a workshop down at base camp, and our workshop, as you've seen, it has a roof, and it does have a back wall. It houses our school library, and it holds all of our tools. So in the summertime, we are teaching hand tools and whittling in our workshop area, but also in the school year, if we need to build like the Indian village, the kids are still able to utilize those learning skills. It helps with their fine motor skills, even with the bow saw. getting everything ready to build their little Indian village. But on the rainy days, on the sleet and snowy and freezing cold days, that offers shelter for them.
Okay.
And then on the cold days, we just build a campfire. But again,
they must be very healthy, right?
Yes, they are very healthy. But the main part of keeping kids outdoors is to get them engaged in nature to the point where they're not thinking about their level of discomfort. So if they're hot or they're cold or it's raining, they're not noticing that because they're so engaged in their own learning. And they're choosing to learn. So at the end of the day, they want to learn. In public schools, they're told to sit down and be quiet and listen to the teacher because the teacher has a set amount of information that they have to get their children to learn. And it turns children off. Nobody wants to listen to it. They don't want to sit down. They don't want to listen. And now they're acting out. And now they're a behavior problem. Or now mom and dad is taking them to the doctor to get them medicated so that they can sit in school like zombies. It's horrifying. Children need to move. They need to run around and learn. So for like math class, we're at the creek and we're measuring and we're weighing different objects, or we're creating a recipe for like baking a mud pie. How many cups of mud do you need? Let's make the recipe. Now they're writing and they're counting and they're using their deductive reasoning, and they're adding and they're subtracting. They're finding out their measurements from 1 teaspoon to a tablespoon to a half a cup or a quarter cup. It's all getting them engaged instead of sitting there with a worksheet at a desk. And they're not going to remember that, but they are going to remember the memory that they were creating at the creek making the mud pie.
And together and while playing.
Kids learn through memory. Adults make memories, and that's how we learn. We don't necessarily remember the individual days of our school sitting there doing our arithmetic or our multiplication, but we do remember that it wasn't fun sitting there. We do remember the fun times at school because those were actual events that created a memory. The actual dull parts aren't remembered. There's just too much of them. So we're trying to teach through memories.
And apparently here in the US it's much more interactive than what we have in France. My friends here say that here it's so fun for kids. So imagine in France if here it's fun.
Really?
So like, they love to go at school because it's so nice, so fun, so interactive.
Well, the United States now is really, really starting to pay attention to a forest school learning. So teachers are now encouraged to find more ways to get their classrooms outside. And this whole forest school ethos will only work if there's a forest school in every community across the United States and across the world. This is a world problem, as you've just pointed out. It's not just here, it's in France, it's in England, it's in everywhere, every small town across the entire world, and the children are our future. And if we don't stop, or at least slow down and start figuring this out again, we're the ones that are going to suffer because we will have created monsters.
And you know what? I have an Ivorian friend from Ivory Coast, and she says, well, she followed my summit and she was like, it's crazy because everything you say, it's what we used to do like naturally, and now everyone is trying to push the kids. It seems better to be like Western world, and it's like, so like, it's crazy, we are trying to go the wrong way.
Yes, it is.
So hard.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I, there's a lot of scholars that can pinpoint, back in the 50s when education kind of took that shift, and industrialized education, and everything has been going downhill ever since. So.
Yeah, it's a bit depressing sometimes when you realize there are so few of them. I mean, it's increasing, the awareness increases, but it's so slow.
Right. Well, all we can do is we can just keep spreading the words. We've got educators from all over the country coming to visit us to ask what we're doing, to take a tour. We share all of our information for what we're doing here, because we really believe in what we're doing. And if we don't share that information, if we're asking people to go reinvent the wheel every single time, it's going to take too long.
Yeah.
We've already figured out how to do it. Come and copy us.
And what I like also is the fact that you're so radical. You could have chosen, like many schools in France, to be like outdoors every morning, let's say, and have a shelter for the rest of the day, but you're radical, like outdoors every day, whatever happens. And I like it because it shows it's an example, and to follow.
Yeah, and the kids love it. Like I mean, it's the parents that are like, oh, I don't know, it's raining. I think we're gonna keep the kids home. And I'm like, are you crazy? No, send them and see.
Yeah.
We've got rain suits, they're all slicked out, and the things that they see on rainy days, they're not going to see any other time. So there's all new discoveries. Or when it's freezing cold out, and don't keep your kids home, send them outside.
Exactly,
just put an extra layer of clothes on, they'll be fine. It's not forever. We're not here for 12 hours. They're just coming to play outside for a few hours with us.
And it's just an habit, because when you live, for example, in the Netherlands, as I told you, you get used to the rain. At the beginning, you're like, oh, few drops, I'm staying home, and then you have no choice. You are with your bike, you have to go shopping, and you go and you get so wet and so freezing cold, but you keep going, and you're like, okay.
I know. It's all in your head.
Yeah.
And for children, if we can get them into that mindset early enough, even with bugs, look at the irrational fear of people with bugs.
I don't get it either.
Bugs are so little. They cannot do us any harm for the most part. There are very few bugs in the world that can hurt us. And yet people are terrified of bugs. And inside, children are used to smooth edges and flat surfaces, and they don't get that uneven gravel or trail walking, and so it's not even helping them physically when they're like that. They're rough edges. Trees offer rough edges. There's nothing smooth or consistent in nature, and that's what children need to keep that creativity going, to think outside the box,
that's what
and to think for themselves. What we're doing, we're not telling children what to think, we're teaching them how to think. So instead of your daughter bringing you a rock and saying, what rock is this? Instead of telling her what kind of rock it is, you say, oh, what a great question. Let's go get our books. So now you're teaching her how to investigate on her own. You're giving her the skills she's going to need later on to take care of herself and to take care of you when you're too old to help yourself.
That's a selfish way of
it's a circle, the circle of life. We need to teach these kids how to take care of themselves. So
Yeah. And about the problem solving that you talked about earlier, how would you say being outdoors like that helps about it?
Oh my goodness.
In lots of
yes,
ways.
you're always constantly problem solving. So say you want to get a fire going and it's rained. What are we gonna do? You know, it rained last night and all the ground is wet. How do we get a fire started? Because my tummy's grumbling and I want some hot tea and biscuits, right? So you have to start looking around your environment. Let's start lifting up leaves and seeing if we can find some dry punk. Let's look in the trees for any dead branches, because the dead branches are going to be dried before the ground is, because they're in the air and they're surrounded by air. That's problem solving at its greatest. So you can take that same aspect into any kind of learning that you can think of. Like, and I want to build a shelter, but my rope is very short. So how am I going to do this? Do I need to forage for some cordage and make my own rope? Or do I need to work on my different types of knots so that I don't need a lot of rope? Do I need to decide on a different type of structure? Maybe since I just have a little bit of rope, I would just make a tripod using a sheer lashing knot. That way because I don't have a lot of rope, and I'll just make a different type of shelter. So it's the same thing with being an adult.
Yeah, I agree. And what about collective thinking? Well, my question was more about that. So collective thinking, and I don't know if it's the right word for it, and conflict solving also. You know, when...
Oh, well, we love conflict. Yes, we love conflict. Because that teaches the kids communication and socialization and leadership. So again, we're looking for opportunities to teach the children. So when the children are fighting over a stick, that was my stick, I found it first, and as an adult, we're kind of looking around like we're in a forest. Can't you just find another stick? But they have no other choice, so they get really attached to the stick. Maybe they've already whittled this stick, and they are attached to the stick, and they're, they put their name on it, or they like it. Who knows? It's their stick. And the little kid was like, I don't care, I found it on the ground, it's my stick now. And so there's the conflict. This little kid spent all this time whittling this stick and making it his own, but then this other kid found it on the ground. So let's talk about it. And we call it taco. So T-A-C-O, like the Mexican taco. So the kids love, I don't want to say they love, but they really know when we say, okay, let's taco about it. That means that everyone comes together, like in a taco, and we talk about it. We do a lot of conflict resolution, and then we also play act different scenarios on our stage. We have a forced theater, and we do different scenarios. So say in one scenario we want to teach about bullying. The little kids are going to find, through examples and through play acting, how to resolve bullying or how to talk to someone. Like earlier today, you told me that I was ugly and that hurt my feelings, and I don't want to be your friend anymore. So now we're talking about emotions. We're getting the kids to talk about how they feel, to show empathy, to step outside of themselves and say, well, that is pretty sad. I mean, why are you not my friend because you don't think I'm pretty? Why do my looks mean so much to you? Well, it's not your looks, it's your shirt. It's an ugly shirt. Well, I didn't pick out my shirt. My mom made me wear it because my grandma bought it for me. So it teaches the kids to think outside the box, to understand all these other different moving parts to create empathy. Or how would you feel if someone bigger than you pushed you down? Would you feel scared? Would you feel scared if I pushed you down? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, this is how this little kid feels, scared. They thought you were their friend, and now you're pushing them to the ground because you took your stick or whatever. Do you see what I mean? So we're always talking about how we feel to get them to talk about how they feel. And that's why we have Daisy. Daisy the dog.
Yeah, the dog.
So when we have a child who's very upset, Daisy is a great comfort because Daisy is usually asleep. And if they don't have any other friend, they always have Daisy. Or we can say, Daisy looks sad today. And they can say, well, I don't know. I think Daisy's really kind of mad. And so when they say how they think Daisy feels, they're now allowing themselves to talk about how they feel.
Like a mirror.
Yeah, a mirror. So Daisy is a SEAL dog in training. SEAL is an acronym for social and emotional aspects of learning. And it's a tool that we really rely on because we work with children and we are outside and we are a multi-age facility, meaning that we have children from 2 to 12 in the summertime. And it's very important that they understand that we are a forest family. And the younger kids are going to emulate the bigger kids. So it's really important that the bigger kids really have a good grasp and on who they're going to be, because these kids are following any kind of behavior, good or bad. So we're constantly saying, you know, are you setting a good example with what you're doing? We do have little children here. Do you think that this is, it goes back to do unto others as others would do unto you. So, yeah, we're always talking about everything.
Yeah, I'm so impressed because it's everything that I could like see in theory. Like everything I would say it's perfect, like multi-age and being outdoors every day. Like you did it.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed.
Well, everything even down at the creek is intentional as well. So back in the 70s, when SIDS, that sudden infant death syndrome, and I'm just saying that because I'm looking at your son, parents were encouraged to put their babies on their backs instead of on their stomachs. Right. So from then on, children have less and less time now on their tummies in their cribs. Now they're not looking up and putting their hands down. Right. They're on their back. So being on a back is kind of like being a turtle during those first few months until they start rolling over and are spending more time on their stomachs. So children now have less developed core body strength in them. They're spending less time now on the floor, crawling around, because their parents are on the go. Go, 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 go. So children are more likely to be on a couch, sitting there watching TV. They're more likely to be in a car seat, driving here and there. They're spending less time crawling and more time going and pulling themselves up on all this furniture that we have, because outside they don't have this. So they spend more time crawling, which helps develop their muscles also. But inside they go very rapidly from crawling into now walking. And they're not walking on uneven surfaces, they're walking on your floors in your house. So they're not learning balance very well either. So the kids that come here for the first time fall down a lot because they don't have, even adults slip and slide and fall down, because you can tell a person that's been outside for a long time because they can walk without looking. They can navigate without thinking about it. They can go up and down the trails without any problems. The children, we've got children as young as 2 running up and down the hills without falling, but then we can have a 12-year-old that can't stand up for more than 10 minutes without falling down on a trail, because they're tripping and they're slipping and they're sliding and they're not used to walking on uneven surfaces. They've got no sense of balance, no equilibrium. And so the things that we have down at the creek, like the rappelling hill or the balance beams or the canoe where they can get in, that's hung between 2 trees and just rock back and forth to learn balance, or our slack line where the kids can walk across the slack line. All that helps to redevelop their core body strength. So we're not just looking at EQ, which is the emotional quotient in children, and teaching emotional intelligence. We're also hand in hand getting them physically ready to be a happy, healthy adult.
Because I suppose there is a link between the balance you can have in your body and the balance you can have in your mind, right? Kind of. Yeah. I've never thought about that really, but yeah, that makes sense.
It's important.
Yeah. Probably yoga makes it somehow.
Yeah, and in the winter months for our school, we do yoga every morning to get the kids mentally and physically ready for their day in the forest. We think it's very important. Now, our summer camp kids are more active than our primary school kids, just because they're playing more and they're less engaged in their learning. It's more of a different type of play. We're not teaching them ABCs and 1, 2, 3s during summer camp. We're doing other things. So we felt it was very necessary to do yoga for our school, and it's had great results too. Especially on Mondays when they've done nothing but sit on the couch all weekend long. Mondays are tough for kids here because they live sedentary lives at home, and we are very active, very, very active. But we like it.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I have any more questions. I had a question about your next project, but you answered about with the forest for adults.
Yeah, that's our next big project. We're really excited. Our little test group of adults that we did for TAG in the forest, they really want to sign up for some classes, and the things that we are putting out in the in the community right now. I think parents especially are a little like, what are you doing? So we had the same wall when we said we were opening a forest school. They're like, what is that? So we're constantly moving forward. We're pushing the boundaries. and I like the freshness and the newness of it, and it's okay. If we can teach children how to play in the forest, I know that we can teach adults to play in the forest, and rekindle that childhood spirit. Because again, there's a famous quote by I think George Bernard Shaw that says, "We don't stop playing because we grow old, right? We grow old because we stop playing."
Oh yeah,
yes.
I read that.
Yes.
Yeah,
so it is true.
Yeah,
it is true. We're so focused on our careers and our children and our families, and we get so caught up that we forget to play. And at the end of the day, we're vegging out in front of the TV, on our cell phones. We're even just reading a book. We're not going outside and we're not playing. We're doing everything we can to find a break. And it is a break, but it's not rejuvenating us. It's not sparking creativity. It's not sparking joy. It's just relief. And we need more than just relief from stress.
It's quite passive, and you're talking about things more active, and like you're engaged in.
Right. And adults are becoming, they're finding less and less things that are joyful. Pure, unadulterated joy. The joy of trying to catch a friend in tag that we found so enticing. Guess what? It's just as fun as adults, because now we're moving our bodies, right? We're getting our blood up. We're trying to figure out how to hide. We've got that excitement and that adrenaline, and we can't get that in any other way. You can't get that kind of joy and that type of physical and mental release from stress than playing games in the forest. The forest is a very healing place.
You can do that with your kids, actually. If you go outside in the forest with your kids, it's
it doesn't
the
matter.
best way to
catch
do
your
it.
kids. Play hide and seek with your kids. It's the same thing. But you still are holding on to a little bit of your momness. What we're trying to do is take you to a deeper level where you are yourself a child.
Exactly,
Because at the end of the day, you're still worried about your children. When you're without your children and you're without your spouse and you're just with your friends, now you're taken back to that carefree time in your mind. But now you're building new memories instead of just thinking back and remembering your memories from childhood. So yes, to a certain extent, it's very important to play with your children. I know I play with all of my children and all 14 of my grandchildren. But yes, Emily is the youngest of 8. My daughter, Emily. And then baby Ren, the little one, is the youngest of 14 grandchildren. So we're constantly playing with our children, but you're still that mom. You're still that grandparent thinking, oh, I hope they don't fall.
I agree.
They're over there and they shouldn't be over there. What if there's a thing over there that they could get hurt on? Or stopping play because you're afraid that they're going too far, or they're doing, whatever.
Or at least it takes practice to be a little less concerned about your kids outside. I mean, as much as you go outdoors, the less your concern, the more relaxed you are.
Yes, you are. But when you're with friends, you don't say,
I agree also.
Oh, careful, you might fall down. You're like, no, I'm going to get you.
Exactly. That's a very nice idea that you had. Yeah, really cool. Can I ask you what you did before this forest school?
Yes, I was a restaurateur. I was a chef.
Really?
Yes,
Oh,
really.
wow, that was super
Yes, I
different.
was a chef. I'm still a cook, but just for my family.
Just for family, yeah.
And I just, it's very hard. And I was getting very old, and tired. I just didn't want to be in that kind of stress every day.
Yeah.
And the hours were very long, and the work is very hard.
And you were stuck inside.
And I was inside all the time. My family and I always camped since I was a baby. And I'm not an inside creature, but it was something that I do well, and I could make a living on it. But I told my husband, I said, no more. I need to do something different. I'm not having fun anymore. And when you realize in your life that you're not having fun, it's significant, because now every day that you go to work, it's really hard.
Yeah, it's an effort. So when
it is a huge effort to get out of bed. So he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, I don't know. I just want to play in the woods with my grandchildren.
Oh.
And he said, "Good luck making that happen."
Oh. And you did.
So I took some time off, and I just started to. I'm like Alice in Wonderland, and I love chasing rabbits down rabbit holes. And just through reading and research and trying to redefine me in a forest setting, I didn't know what that would be. I came across an ad actually that said, "Become a forest school instructor," and I said, "What's that?" So I ended up going back to school, and I don't think my husband thought I was serious until I started working with a shovel and taking the dog back there and a rake and trying to build where I wanted everything. So when we first opened, we didn't have any buildings. We had tarp shelters. We had a couple of rudimentary trails, one bridge, but the bridge was just a fallen down tree to get across. So after 3 years, you see now what it is, but he's a retired builder, and once he saw that we were actually getting children here, and I was gaining traction, and the Wall Street Journal came to do a story, and then last fall the Voice of America came to do a documentary, and then all the local news and newspapers. I think people at the end of the day are very intrigued about forest school, and they want to know more. They want to get involved. They want to help. They understand that this is very important. And it's just an awesome thing how the community has come together to help support us for what we're doing with the children here in our community and elsewhere. Because we live at Smith Mountain Lake, we have a lot of people coming either down from Northern Virginia or up from the south to stay at the lake, or moving here and relocating to send their children to school here in the fall. So it's very heartwarming and humbling and awesome that it works, and it's working. We're very happy.
Yeah, very nice that you got. I was wondering if you got any support from the community, from the parents, but you said you had.
Yeah, so I mean, we're not rich by any means. We live very simply. So we need help with building supplies, because you've seen all of the building, all of the building down there takes wood and materials. We harvested all of the posts, the cedar posts for the bridges and all the buildings ourselves from our property. And then when we ran out, there are other people in the community that said, Yes, come over and chop my trees down.
Oh, wow.
So for posts, for the structures, but the floor for the workshop, that's a wooden floor. It was like $3,000 just for the floor. And so local building companies would donate that, or even the rafters would help. And then the roof, the local roofing companies would come in and donate the roofing for that. So yes, we rely heavily on local donations. And then for scholarships for the kids that can't afford to come here, the community has stepped up and donated money for children to come here for the summer. So we could pay for, you know, our teachers to come and help. So yeah, it takes a village to raise a children, and it's true. And this village is doing a phenomenal job at helping to raise the children in our village. So for the kids that are coming to visit, because we do have pop-in kids, we call them pop-in kids. So we have a lot of grandparents that have property at the lake, and school vacations. Where do you send your children? Or when school closes, or when parents are just traveling, like you're traveling, we still allow, because we do have the staff, for those pop-in children to come anytime during the year to experience camp while school is in session. So yes, that is still, we still do that also. Starting this up, you know, was very, we already had the property, so it was almost no money involved in getting this started, except for my degree to go back to school and the time it took. But then, you know, I was able to kind of do both. I could go to school also, because it was all online, and I could still work on the school. So, like physically build the school and the trails. But it took a lot of time
I was about to
in
ask
the woods to try and figure out, like, how, like, how this should be. Do you see what I mean? And sitting in the creek with the dog, like trying to think, how are we going to get down here? You know, how am I going to come from the house to the creek? How are we going to get the kids around? You know, how do we make it look bigger than it actually is? Because, you know, you're only looking at about 10 acres down there, which is not very big. But when you go down there, it's separated in enclosed different areas. And it has, to me at least, a magical feel when you're going down into the forest. And through a child's eyes, their perspective, we wanted the kids to feel like they truly were in the middle of a forest, so that they could really engage in nature on a deeper level. Do you know what I mean? And if it's just in your backyard, they're not going to get that. It's a completely different mindset. And it's the same for adults. It's the same for adults. It's too hot outside. I'm just going to do this. Or it's too cold outside. Or it's raining outside. Or it just rained. Yeah, this is the craziest thing to me, okay? So the public elementary school is just across the street. And we have an after-school program where we go to the after-school, we pick up all of these children after they let out at 1:30 in the day, and bring them over here to add on to the children that are already here. And it's our after-school enrichment program that we offer just to this school, because we just have to drive across the street to pick them up, right? And And our children, even if it hadn't rained all day, but it rained heavily the day before, they were out playing in mud puddles and jumping and splashing and having mud fights and having great times all day, or even working in the mud kitchen. And I would ask the children, I said, did you get outside to play today? It's a beautiful day. And they would, every time, they would say, not today, it rained yesterday and it's too muddy to play outside. And people need to slow down. They need to slow down. Making $1 million a year isn't important. Driving the newest model car or the best clothes, no. Our children are the most important thing. Their mental health.